Poor student marries elderly billionaire. A week later, she discovers his shocking secret. Hello everyone. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to hear more meaningful stories. Emily Parker tightened her grip on the worn strap of her backpack as she weaved through the bustling, graffiti-stained streets of her neighborhood. The morning air was sharp, biting at her cheeks and slipping through the thin fabric of her thrifted coat. She walked quickly, her scuffed sneakers slapping against the pavement, each step a quiet rebellion against the weight of her world. Her face was a mask of focus, but beneath it, worry throbbed like a dull ache. The bus stop was just a few blocks away, a brief escape before the crushing reality of her life reclaimed her. At 22, Emily was a medical student by day, a waitress by night, and a caregiver always. Her dreams of donning a white coat and offering healing hands had once burned brightly, but now they felt like a distant echo, drowned by the cacophony of responsibilities. Her mother, once vibrant and full of life, was now a shadow of herself, battling the relentless grip of diabetes, medication, rent, bills. They piled up on the chipped kitchen counter like an avalanche, threatening to bury them all. Ethan, her 13-year-old brother, was sliding through the cracks of adolescence, his anger and confusion manifesting in school suspensions and midnight disappearances. She saw in him a reflection of her own fears, the sense of being lost with no clear path to follow. Grace, the youngest at 7, clung to her sister with wide, questioning eyes, too young to understand why the lights sometimes flickered with the threat of disconnection or why dinner was often a creative assembly of whatever canned goods they had left. Emily had become an expert in the art of figuring it out. She figured it out when the pantry was nearly empty, when Ethan needed shoes, when Grace needed comfort, and when their landlord pounded on the door with rent demands that felt like gunshots to her already battered spirit. She held it together with duct tape and determination, a quiet heroine in a world that never seemed to notice. The bus finally rattled into view, its brakes screeching against the cold. Emily climbed aboard, slipping into a window seat. The city blurred into a gray mosaic as the bus lurched forward. And for a moment, she allowed herself to imagine a different life, one where the weight on her shoulders was just a backpack and not the future of her entire family. But as the bus drew closer to campus, the dream dissolved, and all that remained was the heavy truth. Her shift at the diner awaited, her textbooks begged for attention, and the eviction notice taped to their apartment door lingered in the back of her mind like a threat. Emily Parker was a girl on the edge, clinging to a dream that felt more fragile with every passing day, yet too stubborn to let go. The sun had dipped below the horizon by the time Emily returned to the small, dimly lit apartment she called home. She slipped through the front door, her bones aching with exhaustion, and set her worn-out backpack on the peeling linoleum floor. The scent of herbal tea mixed with the musty dampness of the old walls, a bittersweet reminder of comfort and decay. Her mother, Linda, sat in the sagging armchair by the window, a threadbare blanket draped over her fragile shoulders. The tea trembled in her hands, and Emily's heart squeezed at the sight. "Emily, honey, come sit." Linda's voice was a soft rasp, worn thin by years of illness and worry. The invitation held a weight that settled into Emily's stomach like stones. She knew that tone, the gentle prelude to harsh truths. Emily sank into the couch, its springs groaning beneath her. She folded her hands in her lap, bracing herself. Her mother cast a quick glance toward the narrow hallway where Ethan and Grace were watching cartoons, their laughter a fragile bubble in the heavy air. When Linda finally spoke, her words came out in a quiet rush, as if saying them faster might lessen their sting. "The landlord came by again today," she whispered, her eyes glassy with a mix of fear and resignation. "He's given us 2 weeks. If we don't have the money." She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Emily could already see their belongings piled on the curb, the way strangers might glance over them with curiosity or pity. She could feel the bite of the cold street through the thin soles of her shoes. "I'll pick up more shifts," Emily said quickly, her voice stronger than she felt. "I'll figure something out." Figuring things out was her superpower, her curse. But her mother's hollow eyes said what her lips could not. Emily was already stretched thin, teetering on the edge. The thought of her daughter sacrificing more twisted Linda's face with a grief that stole the breath from Emily's lungs. A sharp knock on the door cut through the silence. Emily rose, her movements slow, cautious. She pulled open the door to reveal her Uncle Ray, a broad-shouldered man whose life on the road as a trucker was etched into his weathered skin. His presence filled the small entryway, a gust of cold air and the scent of gasoline and coffee following him inside. "Ray?" Emily blinked, stepping aside as he walked in, his heavy boots thudding against the floor. "What are you doing here?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes swept over the cluttered apartment, lingering on Linda's frail form, then on the faded wallpaper peeling at the seams. Finally, he lowered himself into a chair, the wood creaking beneath his weight. "I've been hearing about the trouble you're in," he began, his voice gruff but not unkind. "I've been thinking, and I got a proposition for you." Emily's skin prickled. She didn't like the way he said it, the way the word, proposition, sat between them like a shadow. "What kind of proposition?" Ray leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "There's a man I used to work for, William Thompson. Real wealthy. He's looking for a wife." Emily's mind stuttered over the word. "A wife?" Ray nodded, his face unreadable. "He's older, 65, maybe more, sick, too. He doesn't want romance or nothing, just a legal arrangement. He'll pay good money, enough to take care of you, your mom, and the kids, and when he passes, you'd get a hefty inheritance." Emily's world seemed to tilt. She gripped the arm of the couch, her knuckles white against the faded fabric. "You can't be serious." "I am." Ray's expression remained steady, a mix of pragmatism and pity. "Look, I know it sounds bad, but think about it. You wouldn't have to worry about rent, bills, school. All of it could go away. This could save your family." The room closed in around her. Emily's pulse thudded in her ears, drowning out the sounds of the TV, her mother's shallow breathing, even Ray's voice. She saw images flash before her, her mother's medicines lined up on the counter, Ethan's worn-out sneakers, Grace's hopeful smile when Emily brought home a box of day-old pastries from the diner. Her dream of becoming a doctor shimmered in the distance, now nothing more than a fragile illusion. Her life had become a tightrope walk, and below her lay the sharp, unforgiving edges of reality. Ray's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. "You don't gotta decide now. But think about it. You might not get another chance like this." When he finally left, Emily sat motionless, her mind racing through a labyrinth of desperation and hope. She could hear her siblings laughing in the next room, their joy a thin veil over the crumbling foundation of their lives. She closed her eyes and saw a different life, one where her mother was healthy, where Ethan stayed out of trouble, where Grace grew up with a childhood worth remembering. It wasn't the life she wanted, but it might be the only one she could give them. And so, as the night closed in and the apartment descended into sleep, Emily made her decision. She would meet William Thompson. She would see for herself if the devil's bargain her uncle proposed could truly be her family's salvation. Because when the world closes in and all the doors lock tight, sometimes the only way out is through. The wrought iron gates of William Thompson's estate loomed ahead, dark and intricate against the gray sky. Emily stood just beyond them, her fingers wrapped tightly around the frayed strap of her weathered handbag. The gates creaked open slowly, revealing a cobblestone path that wound through manicured lawns and past marble fountains that gurgled with a quiet, unsettling elegance. The mansion itself rose beyond the gardens like a ghost from another era, its grand facade of stone and glass seemingly untouched by time, yet weighed down by a sense of isolation. Her Uncle Ray's old truck had already disappeared down the winding drive, leaving Emily alone with the echo of gravel crunching beneath tires and the muted thud of her own heartbeat. Each step forward felt as though she were wading through water, heavy and deliberate, pulling her deeper into a world where she did not belong. A man in a tailored suit stepped out from a discreet guard booth, his expression a perfect blend of professionalism and detachment. "Miss Emily Davis?" he asked, his voice smooth as the polished marble that lined the mansion's entrance. She nodded, her voice caught somewhere in her throat. "This way, please." The butler led her up the stone steps and through towering oak doors that opened into a foyer bathed in soft, golden light. The air inside was cool and scented faintly with cedar and aged paper. Her worn sneakers squeaked softly against the gleaming marble floor, and she tucked her hands into the sleeves of her jacket, feeling the draft of old money and silent secrets brush against her skin. As they moved through the labyrinthine halls, Emily's eyes darted to the portraits that lined the walls, stern-faced men in dark suits, women in pearls and lace, children frozen in time with half-smiles that seemed to follow her. The mansion was both breathtaking and suffocating, a gilded cage where the whispers of history lingered in every corner. Finally, they arrived at a set of ornate double doors. The butler knocked twice, a practiced rhythm, and then opened them with a slight bow. "Mr. Thompson will see you now." Emily stepped inside and the doors closed behind her with a soft thud, leaving her alone in the cavernous study. The room was wrapped in warm wood tones, the walls lined with bookshelves filled to the brim with leather-bound volumes. A large window overlooked the garden, where the autumn leaves danced on a breeze she could not feel. At the center of the room, behind a mahogany desk, sat William Thompson. Her first impression was of stillness. William sat with his back straight, his hands folded neatly on the desk. His silver hair was meticulously combed, his suit perfectly tailored to his lean frame. He might have been mistaken for a portrait himself if not for the sharp blue of his eyes that moved over her. Calm and assessing. "Miss Davis," he said, his voice a blend of gravel and grace. "Please, sit." Emily hesitated for a fraction of a second before crossing the room, her footsteps muffled by the thick Persian rug. She perched on the edge of the chair, her fingers entwined tightly in her lap, knuckles pale against her skin. William's gaze remained steady, his expression a mask of civility. "I understand that your uncle explained the nature of my proposal." She swallowed, her throat dry. "He did. Good." He leaned back, his movements controlled, as if every gesture was measured against an internal metronome. "I believe in transparency. I am not looking for companionship, nor do I expect any affection. This arrangement would be purely legal. You would be my wife in name only, with the understanding that when I am gone, you and your family would be well provided for." The room seemed to close in around her, the air growing thick. She wanted to ask why her, why now, but the words tangled together, heavy with fear and confusion. Instead, she nodded, a small, sharp movement that did nothing to ease the tightness in her chest. William continued, his tone even. "I will ensure that your mother's medical expenses are covered, that your siblings receive the support they need. You will not want for anything while under my care." He paused, his fingers tracing the edge of a silver fountain pen. "In return, I ask only for discretion and respect. This house is a quiet place, and I would prefer it remain so." Emily bit the inside of her cheek, the metallic taste grounding her in the moment. "Why me?" she managed, the question slipping through before she could catch it. His lips quirked at the corner, a ghost of a smile that never reached his eyes. "Your uncle spoke highly of your character. Hard-working, resilient, qualities I admire." He hesitated, and for the briefest moment, a shadow passed over his face. "And perhaps, in offering you an opportunity, I might find a measure of solace." Silence settled between them, as heavy as the ornate drapes that framed the windows. Emily forced herself to meet his gaze, searching for something, anything, that might betray his true intentions. But his expression remained a careful blend of kindness and detachment, as if he were both present and 1,000 miles away. "I need time to think about it," she said, her voice a thread in the vastness of the room. "Of course." William opened a leather folder and slid a sheaf of papers across the desk. "This is a draft of the agreement. Take it, read it thoroughly. If you decide to move forward, my assistant will handle the details." Emily reached out, her fingers brushing against the cool, smooth leather. The weight of the folder seemed disproportionate, as if the future itself lay between those polished covers. She stood, her knees threatening to buckle beneath her, and forced herself to remain steady. William rose as well, extending his hand. She took it, surprised by the warmth of his skin, the strength of his grip. "Whatever you decide, Miss Davis," he said quietly, "I hope it brings you the peace you seek." The butler reappeared, as if summoned by some invisible cue, and led her back through the winding halls. The grandeur of the mansion seemed to press against her, each gilded frame and crystal sconce a reminder of the world she was about to step into, or run from. When she finally emerged into the crisp evening air, Emily drew in a breath so deep it felt as though she were tasting oxygen for the first time. The mansion stood behind her, its windows reflecting the dying light, a house of mirrors and secrets. She clutched the folder to her chest as she walked down the path, her feet moving faster with each step. Her heart thudded in time with the echo of the gates closing behind her, sealing away the man whose offer could change everything. As Emily made her way back to the life she knew, the weight of the decision sat heavy on her shoulders. She was standing on the precipice of two worlds, one filled with the cold certainty of struggle, the other with the unsettling promise of security. And somewhere between those two worlds, suspended in the twilight, was a choice that only she could make. The wedding ceremony took place under a sky thick with rolling gray clouds, the air tinged with the promise of rain. Emily stood at the edge of the garden, the sprawling mansion behind her and a delicate archway of white roses ahead. The blooms were perfect, their petals crisp and unblemished, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into a fairy tale turned upside down, one where the princess wasn't sure if the prince was a savior or a specter. Her dress was simple, chosen more for its modest elegance than for any bridal fantasy. The ivory fabric whispered against her skin, and the lace sleeves were a gentle weight on her arms. She felt like a guest at her own wedding, an extra in a story where she should have been the lead. Her hands gripped the small bouquet of gardenias and lavender, the stems wrapped in white satin. The flowers were fragrant and calming, but beneath the veil, her breathing was shallow and rapid. The few guests who had gathered were mostly from William's world, stoic men in dark suits and women with pearls resting against their collarbones. Emily's family, unable to hide the confusion and concern behind their smiles, sat together in a row near the back. Her mother clutched a handkerchief, her eyes glassy with gratitude and worry, while her siblings fidgeted, their young faces painted with an innocence Emily was desperate to preserve. When the music began, soft and classical, Emily forced her feet to move. Each step down the makeshift aisle felt heavy, as if the grass itself were pulling her back. Her Uncle Ray offered a small, encouraging nod, but it did little to dispel the fog of uncertainty surrounding her. And then there was William, standing beneath the archway with the same calm demeanor he always wore. His suit was a deep charcoal, perfectly tailored to his lean frame, and his silver hair lent him an air of dignified age. His expression was unreadable, not cold, but composed, as if this were just another transaction in a long line of business deals. His blue eyes held hers, and for a moment, everything else fell away. She could see the echo of his own loneliness mirrored in her own. A quiet understanding that threaded through the distance between them. The officiant, a man with a gentle voice and a worn Bible, began to speak. His words were soft, a murmur against the backdrop of rustling leaves and the soft hum of a distant lawnmower. Emily heard the vows but did not absorb them. They seemed to float just beyond her reach, like petals on the breeze. When it was her turn to speak, her voice came out steady, surprising her. "I do." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of her family's future, the hopes and fears that she had bundled up and brought with her to this moment. William's voice was equally calm when he repeated the vows. "I do." His hand was warm when he slid the delicate gold band onto her finger, the metal cool against her skin. She did the same, her fingers brushing against his. And for a fleeting second, the touch felt almost real, almost like this wasn't just a bargain struck in desperation. The kiss that sealed the marriage was a whisper of warmth, a brush of lips that held no promise but no pretense either. There was no spark, no swell of music, just the soft, shared breath between two people bound by necessity. When they pulled apart, Emily saw a hint of something in William's eyes, a glimmer of gratitude. Perhaps, or relief, she couldn't be sure, and the moment was gone before she could grasp it. The reception was a muted affair. Guests sipped champagne from crystal flutes and nibbled on delicate hors d'oeuvres. Conversation floated through the air, polite and practiced, touching on weather, business, and art. Emily moved through the room like a shadow, accepting well wishes from strangers who knew more about her husband's stock portfolio than they did about the woman he had just married. William remained at her side, ever the gentleman, introducing her as "my wife," with a formality that made her name feel foreign. His arm rested lightly at the small of her back, a gesture that was more guide than embrace. Emily responded with nods and quiet smiles, her mind drifting to the family table where her siblings were savoring tiny pastries and her mother sat with a glass of sparkling water. A soft smile on her lips. As the afternoon wore on, the guests began to filter out, their cars winding back down the long drive through the wrought iron gates. When the last of the staff cleared away the remnants of the reception, the garden fell silent, save for the distant chirp of crickets waking in the cool dusk. William turned to her, his posture still impeccably straight despite the long day. "You must be tired," he said, his voice gentle but distant. "Mrs. Porter has prepared your room. You should rest." Emily nodded, exhaustion settling into her bones. "Thank you." He hesitated, as if weighing the need for more words, but then offered a small nod. "Good night, Emily." She watched as he retreated into the house, his figure disappearing through the wide doors and into the shadows of the mansion. She stood alone in the garden for a moment longer, the chill of the evening brushing against her skin. The white roses that had framed their vows now looked almost ghostly in the fading light, their petals curling at the edges. When she finally moved, it was with the same slow, deliberate steps she had taken when she first walked through the mansion's gates. The house seemed larger now, its quiet rooms stretching out in all directions. Emily followed the hallway to the room Mrs. Porter had shown her earlier, a suite at the opposite end of the house from William's. The space was beautiful, with soft linens and delicate drapes, but it felt more like a guest room than a place she could call her own. She sat on the edge of the bed, slipping off her shoes and letting the cool air brush over her tired feet. The weight of the gold band on her finger felt unnatural, and she twisted it absently, the metal catching the dim light of the bedside lamp. She thought of her family, now safe and secure, their worries eased by the promise of William's support. It was the only comfort she could hold onto in the strange, quiet space of her new life. As Emily lay back against the pillows, the ceiling above her seemed to stretch into the darkness. She closed her eyes, letting the soft hum of the house fill her ears. She had crossed a threshold today, into a world where nothing was quite as it seemed, and as sleep pulled her under, she found herself drifting through dreams of white roses, stone archways, and the whisper of vows spoken into the wind. The days after the wedding blurred into a soft haze of quiet routines and whispered realities. Emily woke each morning to the gentle tap of rain against the mansion's wide windows or the filtered sunlight stretching across the ornate rugs. Her room, though beautifully furnished, still felt like a guest chamber, a space waiting to be filled with someone else's life. She moved through it with the careful grace of an intruder, touching nothing more than necessary, leaving no trace of herself behind. The mansion itself was a world unto its own. Its vast corridors stretched endlessly, each turn revealing another perfectly preserved room. There were sitting rooms adorned with antique furniture, a library whose walls were wrapped in leather-bound books, and a music room with a grand piano that gleamed under the soft glow of the chandeliers. Emily often found solace there, her fingers grazing the piano keys, coaxing out quiet melodies that hung in the air like secrets. It was the only place where she felt the pull of her own reality, where the music became a bridge between who she was and who she was becoming. William remained a distant figure. Their interactions were polite and brief, mostly over shared meals in the formal dining room. He would ask about her comfort, her needs, but never pressed for more. His questions were practical, his answers even more so. He was a man who had built his life on control and order, and Emily was simply another part of the structure he had created. Yet, beneath his polished exterior, she sensed something else, an echo of loneliness that mirrored her own. Despite his reserved nature, there were moments when the walls between them seemed to thin. One afternoon, as Emily sat in the garden sketching the delicate blooms, William appeared at the edge of the patio. His presence was a quiet ripple in the stillness, and when she looked up, he offered her a small, almost shy smile. "You draw?" he asked, his voice soft against the hum of the garden's fountain. Emily nodded, holding up the sketchpad. The page was filled with soft pencil strokes, capturing the roses with a gentle realism. "It helps me think." He stepped closer, his shadow mingling with hers. "You have talent. The roses look almost real." His eyes traced the drawing, and for a brief moment, Emily saw a flicker of something vulnerable, a window into a man who saw beauty but rarely let it touch him. They remind me of my mother's garden, she said, her voice finding its own softness. Back home, she used to grow them. She always said roses were like people, beautiful, but only if you learned how to care for them properly. William's expression shifted, his features pulling into a thoughtful mask. She sounds wise. She is, Emily replied, her smile tinged with a quiet sadness. I hope to see her soon. He nodded, a promise in his gaze. You will. Moments like these became small threads that wove through the fabric of their days. William began to join her more often, not as an obligation, but as if drawn by the same quiet need for connection. They would sit together in the library, Emily with a book in her lap and William with papers spread before him. He shared little of his work, but she noticed the way his brow furrowed, the way his hands tightened around a pen when he thought no one was watching. The mansion might have been his kingdom, but Emily began to see the weight of it pressing down on him. The toll of a life lived behind walls. In the evenings, they would share dinner, the clinking of silverware a rhythm they both found comfort in. Mrs. Porter, the housekeeper, would bring out steaming dishes, and they would talk, carefully, cautiously, as if each word had to find its place before it could settle. William spoke of his childhood, of summers spent by the sea, of parents who had built their legacy from nothing but grit and determination. Emily shared stories of her siblings, of Jamal's stubbornness and Nia's boundless curiosity. She told him about her dream of becoming a doctor, a dream that had always felt fragile but now seemed to hover just beyond reach. One stormy night, as rain lashed against the windows, Emily found herself in the music room. She sat at the piano, her fingers moving over the keys, pulling soft notes from the shadows. She did not expect William to join her, but when she felt his presence, she did not stop playing. He stood by the door, his silhouette a dark line against the golden light, and as the melody filled the room, he moved closer, drawn into the orbit of her music. That song, he murmured when she finished, his voice a low rumble. It's beautiful. My mother taught it to me, she said, her fingers still resting on the keys. She always said music could speak when words failed. William sat beside her, a cautious distance between them. His hands, pale and veined, hovered over the keys. I used to play, he admitted, pressing a single note that echoed through the room. Before life became what it is. Emily said nothing, letting the silence hold them. She began to play again, a simple tune, and slowly, tentatively, William joined her. His touch was light, uncertain, but as the music rose, he found his place within it. Their hands moved together, creating harmonies that filled the vast room with warmth. When the final note lingered in the air, they sat still, their breath mingling in the quiet. For the first time, Emily felt the walls of the mansion shift, the heavy stone and wood becoming something softer, something almost welcoming. The space between them no longer felt empty but full of unspoken things, grief, hope, the fragile beginnings of trust. She had entered this house as a stranger, a girl bound by duty, but with each day, each shared note, she was beginning to find her place. And maybe, just maybe, William was finding his too. The days folded into each other, the mansion's echoing halls slowly filling with the quiet rhythm of shared lives. Emily and William had found an unspoken cadence, a balance that required no words. She would rise early, savoring the soft morning light filtering through the wide windows, and often found William already awake, sitting in the garden with a book or sipping tea by the window. His presence had become as much a part of the house as the ivy that crawled over the stone walls, ever present yet subtly fading into the background. Yet, beneath the surface of their newfound tranquility, shadows lingered. Emily had noticed the small signs, the way William's hands trembled as he held his teacup, the slight wince that crossed his face when he thought no one was watching. His steps, once measured and confident, now faltered slightly, as if the ground beneath him had grown uneven. She did not ask, not at first, afraid that speaking the truth might shatter the delicate peace they had woven together. One late afternoon, as rain pelted against the windows and turned the garden into a misty watercolor, Emily found William in the study. He sat at his desk, papers scattered before him, his head resting heavily on one hand. The room was dim, the only light a soft amber glow from the desk lamp, casting long shadows over the dark wood and aged leather of the furniture. "William?" Her voice was a thread in the silence, delicate yet pulling at the fabric of the moment. He didn't respond immediately. His breathing was slow, too measured, and when he finally looked up, his face was pale, a fine sheen of sweat dotting his brow. The book beneath his hand trembled slightly, the pages whispering against each other. "Emily," he said, his voice thin and weary. "I didn't hear you come in." "I was worried," she admitted, stepping further into the room. "You missed lunch and breakfast." She hesitated, her hands twisting together. "Are you all right?" William's lips curved into a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Always so observant," he murmured, his tone a mix of fondness and fatigue. "Come, sit." He gestured to the chair opposite him, and she obeyed, her movements slow and cautious. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The rain filled the silence, a steady hum that seemed to deepen the stillness between them. Finally, William reached into the drawer of his desk, pulling out a small vial of pills. He set them on the desk between them, the amber glass catching the light. "I suppose there's no point in hiding it anymore," he said, his voice a fragile thing. "I'm sick, Emily, terminally so." The words hung in the air, heavy and unwelcome. Emily felt them settle in her chest, a cold weight that stole her breath. "How long?" she managed, her voice a whisper. "A few months, if I'm lucky." His gaze did not falter, but there was a softness in his expression, a gentleness that cut through her like glass. "It's why I proposed this arrangement. I wanted to make sure my affairs were in order, to leave behind something more meaningful than just wealth and an empty house." Emily's mind raced, fragments of conversations and quiet moments piecing together into a story she hadn't seen before. The distance he kept, the formality, the way he seemed to linger in doorways as if saying goodbye. It all made sense now, and the realization sent a shiver through her. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, a tremor in her voice. "I didn't want pity." William's tone sharpened, not with anger but with a desperate kind of honesty. "I didn't want our time together to be clouded by my fate. I wanted you to see me as I am, not as a dying man." Emily bit her lip, struggling to contain the rush of emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. "You could have trusted me," she said, her words gentle but firm. "You didn't have to carry this alone." His expression softened, and he reached across the desk, his hand covering hers. His skin was cool, his grip weak, but the gesture was warm, grounding her in the moment. "I know," he whispered, "but I was afraid. I've spent so much of my life alone, Emily. It became easier to keep my distance than to risk being truly seen." The rain beat harder against the windows, the sky outside a swirling mass of gray. Emily tightened her hold on his hand, her fingers threading through his. "You're not alone now," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "We'll face this together." A shadow passed over William's face, a mixture of relief and sorrow. "I never thought I would find peace in my final days," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But you've given me that." Emily rose from her chair and moved around the desk. Kneeling beside him, she wrapped her arms around him, feeling the fragility of his frame beneath the fabric of his sweater. He leaned into her, his breath warm against her hair, and for a moment, the world outside ceased to exist. In the following days, their routine shifted. The mansion became a sanctuary, not of isolation but of quiet courage. Emily took over many of William's tasks, learning the intricacies of his estate and the responsibilities he would leave behind. She sat with him through long afternoons, reading aloud from his favorite books or playing soft melodies on the piano. Their silences became sacred, filled with unspoken promises and the comfort of simply being present. The mansion, once a place of solitude, now held the hum of life. Mrs. Porter and Mr. Collins moved through the house with a gentleness that mirrored Emily's own, their presence a reminder that love could be found even in the quietest corners of grief. And as William's strength waned, the walls of the house seemed to breathe with him, the very bones of the building holding him with a tenderness that only a home could offer. Emily found strength she hadn't known she possessed, her heart stretching to hold both the sadness and the beauty of the days they shared. She no longer felt like a guest in the mansion but a part of its story, woven into the fabric of its history by the fragile, powerful threads of love and loss. And in those quiet moments, as William rested beside her, his breathing slow and steady, she felt the truth of his gift. Not the wealth or the security, but the lesson he had given her, to live fully, to love deeply, and to hold on to the moments that mattered, even when they slipped away too soon. As autumn's golden light began to wane, the mansion became a world suspended in time. The once quiet halls now carried the soft echo of whispered conversations and the gentle rustle of pages as Emily read aloud to William. Outside, the garden had shed its vibrant greens for warm hues of amber and crimson, each falling leaf a reminder of life's inevitable cycles. Within the mansion, life moved to a rhythm set by William's slow, deliberate breaths and Emily's unwavering presence by his side. William's illness had tightened its grip. His once steady gait was now unsteady, and simple tasks seemed to exhaust him. But his spirit, though quieter, remained unbroken. He found solace in the smallest of moments, a sunbeam cutting through the window, the scent of fresh tea brewed by Mrs. Porter, or the warmth of Emily's hand in his. The mansion, once a monument to loneliness, had transformed into a sanctuary filled with love and gentle care. One chilly evening, Emily sat by the window in the music room, a soft melody from the piano weaving through the cool air. She played with a tenderness that spoke of unspoken words and emotions too vast to articulate. Behind her, wrapped in a woolen blanket, William sat in his armchair, his eyes closed but his lips curved in a peaceful smile. The music seemed to fill the room with light, casting away the shadows that lingered in the corners. When the last note faded, Emily turned to find William watching her, his blue eyes softer than ever. "You play beautifully," he said, his voice a mere whisper. "Every note feels like a memory I didn't know I had." Emily moved to sit by him, tucking the blanket tighter around his frail frame. "You've given me so much, William, more than I could ever repay." He reached up, his fingers brushing against her cheek with a feather-light touch. "There's nothing to repay. What we have, it's a gift. You've made my final days more meaningful than all the years that came before." A tear escaped down Emily's cheek, warm against the coldness of the room. "I'm not ready," she admitted, her voice breaking. "I'm not ready to let you go." William's expression remained calm, a sea of acceptance and love. "We never are, darling. But love isn't just about holding on, it's also about knowing when to let go. I need you to promise me something. Anything. Live, truly live. Take what I leave behind and make it matter. Build something beautiful. Love fiercely. And when you play the piano, let your heart pour into the keys. I want to know that you're not just surviving but thriving." Emily nodded, swallowing the ache that threatened to overtake her. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. "I promise." For the next few days, life slowed to a gentle pulse. Emily remained at William's side, reading to him from his favorite books, recounting stories of her childhood, and sometimes simply sitting in silence, the unspoken words flowing between them. Mrs. Porter and Mr. Collins moved quietly through the house, their faces etched with sorrow but their actions filled with the grace of those who understand the weight of goodbye. On a clear morning, when the sun bathed the garden in soft light, William asked to be taken outside. Emily and Mr. Collins helped him to a chair beneath the old oak tree, its branches a canopy of rustling leaves. Wrapped in blankets, William sat with his face turned to the sky, breathing in the crisp autumn air as if drawing life from the world one last time. Emily sat on the grass beside him, her hand in his, their fingers entwined. They remained like that for hours, as the sun moved slowly across the sky and the shadows grew longer. When William's breathing slowed, becoming a soft, rhythmic lull, Emily remained still. She felt the exact moment when his hand relaxed in hers, his spirit slipping away as gently as a leaf falling to the ground. She did not cry at first. Instead, she sat with him, surrounded by the rustle of leaves and the whispers of the wind. It felt as if the whole world had paused, honoring the quiet departure of a man who had found redemption not through wealth or power, but through the quiet strength of love and acceptance. When she finally stood, Emily pressed a kiss to William's forehead, her lips brushing against the coolness of his skin. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." The days that followed were a blur of arrangements and farewells. The staff of the mansion, friends of William's, and even members of the community who had never known him gathered to pay their respects. Emily stood by his photograph, a serene image of him in the garden, and shared stories of his kindness, his quiet wisdom, and the love that had transformed both of their lives. When the house fell quiet again, Emily took to the piano. She played for William, each note a promise kept, a love letter sent into the ether. The music filled the mansion, not with sadness but with hope, the kind that blooms in the aftermath of loss. And as she played, Emily felt William's presence around her, not as a ghost haunting the mansion, but as a warm breeze that stirred the curtains, as a ray of sunlight that touched her skin, as the soft rustling of leaves that spoke of life continuing, even in the face of goodbye. The mansion, once shrouded in shadows of solitude, now basked in the soft glow of autumn sunlight. Emily stood in the study, surrounded by papers and blueprints, her hands dusted with ink and her mind alive with possibility. The grand old house, with its ornate moldings and sweeping staircases, was on the verge of a transformation as profound as the one she had undergone. It would become a sanctuary, a place where lives could be rebuilt, where hope could take root and flourish. The idea had come to her in the days following William's passing. His final letter, a delicate blend of love and wisdom, had sparked a fire within her. "Use what I've left behind to build something meaningful," he had written. Those words echoed in her mind, pushing her forward with a purpose that wrapped itself around her like a second skin. Emily envisioned the mansion as a community center, a haven for those who, like her once, needed a place to breathe and a path to a brighter future. She wanted to create a space where underprivileged families could find support, where children could laugh and learn, and where the echoes of William's legacy would not be of wealth, but of kindness and redemption. With the help of Mrs. Porter and Mr. Collins, she began reaching out to local organizations and architects. The once pristine sitting rooms were soon filled with sketches and models, their polished surfaces now cluttered with notes and plans. Emily immersed herself in the work, her days a whirlwind of meetings and phone calls, her nights spent poring over designs and budgets. She learned about grants and fundraising, about permits and zoning laws, each new challenge a puzzle to be solved. The mansion's transformation began in earnest. The grand dining hall was cleared of its antique furniture and refitted with tables and chairs where community meetings and classes could be held. The music room, with its grand piano still echoing William's favorite melodies, became a space for art and music therapy. Bedrooms were converted into counseling offices and classrooms, each room repurposed with intention and love. The gardens, where William had taken his final breaths, were turned into a community garden. Emily could often be found there, her hands in the soil, planting seeds alongside volunteers and neighborhood children. She would share stories of William as they worked, telling them about the man who had built this house and the dream they were now bringing to life. "He believed in second chances," she would say, "and this place is a testament to that." As the center took shape, so did Emily's vision for its impact. She partnered with local schools to provide after-school programs, bringing in tutors and mentors to guide young minds. She created workshops for single mothers, offering them resources and support to build better futures for their families. She started a food pantry and a clothing drive, transforming the old storage rooms into hubs of generosity and care. The mansion, once a symbol of isolation, became a beacon of community. Its halls, which had echoed with only the soft tread of William's steps, now resonated with life, children's laughter, the hum of conversations, the soft strum of a guitar from the music room. It was as if the house itself had awakened, shedding its past and embracing its new identity. One evening, as the sun set and bathed the house in shades of amber, Emily stood on the front steps, watching families arrive for an event. She saw a mother leading her young son by the hand, their faces bright with anticipation. She saw an elderly man, his hands worn with age, greeted warmly by a volunteer who helped him carry a bag of fresh produce. She saw teenagers, their backpacks slung over their shoulders, exchanging high fives as they headed to a tutoring session. Her heart swelled with pride and gratitude. She thought of William, of the quiet moments they had shared and the profound impact he had made on her life. He had given her the tools to build a future, not just for herself but for an entire community. His legacy was alive in every smile, in every helping hand, in every story rewritten within these walls. The evening culminated in a small ceremony. Emily stood before a crowd of families, volunteers, and supporters, her voice steady as she spoke. This center is more than just a building. It's a promise that no matter where you come from or what struggles you face, you are valued, you are seen, and you are not alone. When the applause came, it was warm and genuine, a chorus of affirmation. Emily felt the weight of William's notebook in her pocket, a talisman of his guidance and love. She imagined him there, a shadow at the edge of the garden, his blue eyes alight with pride. As the evening wound down and the last of the guests departed, Emily remained in the garden. She knelt by the bed of newly planted flowers, their delicate petals closed against the cool night air. She ran her fingers through the soil, feeling the earth beneath her hands, grounding her in the moment. She whispered a quiet prayer of thanks, not just to William but to the universe, to whatever forces had brought her here, had woven her story with his. She understood now that this was what love looked like, not a grand, sweeping romance, but the quiet strength to build something beautiful out of loss, the courage to carry forward the light left behind by someone you loved. Emily stood, brushing the dirt from her hands. The mansion loomed behind her, not as a relic of the past but as a testament to new beginnings. She turned toward the warm glow of its windows, ready to step back inside, to continue the work, to nurture the seeds of change she had planted. And as she walked, the stars blinked into the sky above, each one a tiny reminder that even in the darkness, light could always find a way through. The mansion stood as a testament to rebirth, its once somber halls now a canvas of life and purpose. What had once been a quiet, echoing monument to William's solitude had transformed into a bustling community center, where laughter and hope intertwined with the fresh scent of blooming gardens. Emily stood on the balcony of what used to be William's study, now her office, watching the sunrise paint the sky with streaks of gold and rose. The morning air was crisp, carrying the sounds of children playing and volunteers preparing for the day's activities. The past year had been a whirlwind of change. Each room in the mansion had found new meaning. The grand dining hall became a cafeteria where families shared meals. The music room evolved into a space where art and music therapy breathed new life into weary souls. And the library hosted workshops, offering knowledge and opportunity to those eager to learn. The old garden, once a quiet refuge for William, now thrived as a community garden, brimming with vegetables, flowers, and the gentle hum of bees. Emily had grown, too. She had shed the uncertainty of her past and embraced the role of a leader. She moved through the mansion with purpose, her hands ink-stained from drafting plans, her heart full from the stories of the people she served. She had learned to navigate grant applications, coordinate events, and manage teams. But more importantly, she had learned to listen, to the elderly woman who needed a place to belong, to the young boy who dreamed of becoming an engineer, and to the mother who sought guidance in building a better life for her children. Today was a special day. The community center was hosting its first annual Legacy Gala, a celebration of the center's impact and a tribute to William's enduring spirit. Emily had spent weeks preparing, turning the mansion into a space that not only showcased its transformation but also honored its history. Photographs lined the walls, images of the community, of projects completed, of lives changed. At the entrance, a large portrait of William greeted guests. His eyes, captured in a rare moment of warmth, seemed to watch over everything, a quiet guardian of the world he had helped create. As the sun climbed higher, guests began to arrive, families who had benefited from the center's programs, volunteers who had given their time, and donors who believed in the vision, all gathered under the mansion's grand chandeliers. Emily moved through the crowd, shaking hands, sharing stories, and expressing gratitude. Each conversation reinforced the profound truth that William's legacy was not his wealth or status but the lives touched by his generosity. When it came time for Emily to speak, she stood on the stage with a mix of confidence and humility. She wore a simple, elegant dress, navy blue, like the sky just before dawn, her voice steady as she addressed the room. "This place," she began, "is more than just walls and windows. It is a beacon, a promise that no matter where you come from, you have a chance to build a brighter future." She spoke of William, of his quiet strength and his final wish to create something meaningful. He showed me that true wealth is not measured by what you own but by the love and hope you leave behind. And tonight, looking at all of you, I know that his legacy is alive. The applause that followed was more than just noise. It was an embrace, a shared acknowledgement of the journey they had all taken together. Emily felt tears prick at her eyes. Not from sadness but from a deep, abiding sense of fulfillment. She had taken William's final wish and woven it into the fabric of the community, creating a tapestry of stories, dreams, and second chances. As the evening unfolded, Emily found herself drawn to the garden. The air was cool, the sky a canopy of stars. She walked the stone paths, her footsteps soft against the earth. She paused by the old stone bench where she and William had shared so many conversations. She sat, letting the quiet surround her, and pulled out his leather-bound notebook from her bag. Its pages were worn, filled with his thoughts, his hopes, and the wisdom he had passed on to her. She opened it to a page marked with a ribbon. The words, written in William's careful script, seemed to glow in the moonlight. Legacy is not about what we leave behind but how we make people feel while we are here. I hope, Emily, that you find the courage to live boldly, to love fiercely, and to never forget your worth. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, and Emily closed her eyes, imagining William's presence beside her. She felt a profound sense of peace, as if he were offering her one final, silent encouragement. She whispered a promise into the night air. I won't let you down. When she stood, the weight of loss had been replaced by a quiet resolve. She walked back toward the mansion, the light spilling from its windows a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there was always hope. Inside, the gala continued, a symphony of voices and music. Emily stepped into the warmth, ready to continue the work, to nurture the seeds of change, and to honor William's legacy in every life she touched. And as the night wore on, and the stars shone above, the mansion, now a home to so many, stood as a living, breathing monument to love, redemption, and the power of a second chance.